The story begins in Australia. Here, we meet a couple named Greg and Hayter. They're tourists staying at the same hostel, where they first met. Both had arrived in Australia with their own groups, but at some point, they decided to break away and try out a shark cage diving experience together. They book a trip with a company called Tucker's Experience, which promises an adrenaline-pumping adventure with sharks. When they arrive at the location, they find the place almost completely deserted. The only person there is an old man named Dave. Dave tells them that Tucker, the owner, is away on holiday, so he won't be able to take them out. But suddenly Tucker himself appears. He introduces himself as the captain of the boat and the man behind Tucker's Experience. Though he was supposed to be on vacation, he surprisingly agrees to take them out anyway. Excited, Greg and Hayter follow Tucker onto the boat, and soon they head out into the open sea. During the ride, Tucker begins to share a story from his past. He reveals that when he was a child, he survived a brutal shark attack, and he still carries the scars on his body as proof. He even shows them an old newspaper clipping reporting the attack. From that day onward, he explains, he has been obsessed with sharks. Hayter, curious, responds, "That must make this job so much harder. After surviving a shark attack, working so close to them every day must be terrifying. If it were me, I'd never set foot in the water again." But Tucker shakes his head, saying it wasn't the shark's fault. Then, without warning, he pours blood into the sea, which immediately attracts a frenzy of sharks circling the boat. It's now time for the dive. Tucker places Greg and Hayter into a metal cage and lowers them into the water. Surrounded by sharks, Hayter panics at first and grabs Greg's hand tightly. But soon the fear fades, replaced by awe. She begins to enjoy the thrill of seeing the creatures up close. The sharks don't appear aggressive, and both start laughing and marveling at the incredible experience. Back on the boat, still buzzing with excitement, they begin to thank Tucker. But without a word, Tucker suddenly stabs Greg in the neck. Greg collapses instantly, and Tucker tosses his body into the shark-filled waters. Hayter screams helplessly, her cries echoing into the empty ocean, with no one around to hear her. The scene then shifts. We are introduced to Zephyr, an American girl. After finishing her surfing session, she heads to a shop near the Gold Coast. There, she meets a real estate agent named Moses, sometimes referred to as Mojis, who is searching for a crucial cable for his car, which won't start. He asks her for help. Zephyr, who lives in a large camper van and prefers to keep to herself, declines. Later, while eating ice cream she had hidden in her cup, she runs into Moses again. Once more, he asks for her help, but she ignores him. Frustrated, Moses threatens her with gestures, hinting he might expose her for a past theft. Zephyr grows upset, but seeing her reaction, Moses quickly softens. He explains he's been walking in the scorching sun and only needs a ride back to his car. After thinking it over, Zephyr agrees. During the ride, they chat, realizing they both share a love for surfing. A bond begins to form, and that night, Zephyr parks her van outside Moses's house. Inside the van, the two grow close and eventually become intimate. The next morning, Moses takes their connection seriously. He confesses he believes they met for a reason and should be together. But Zephyr isn't someone who settles down. She refuses to even step inside his house. While Moses prepares pancakes for her, she leaves without saying goodbye, leaving him heartbroken. Later, Zephyr heads to the beach to surf. When she tries to attach a fin to her surfboard, she realizes it's missing, thrown out by Moses earlier without realizing its importance. Searching nearby, she spots a truck. As she peers inside, she's startled by a man standing behind her, Tucker, who greets her with a smile. Without hesitation, he hands her a fin, saying he has plenty. He even compliments her courage for surfing alone. Zephyr thanks him and begins fixing her board. Just then, Moses sends her a photo of food, asking if she wants to surf together. Before she can reply, Tucker suddenly attacks, slamming her from behind, knocking her unconscious and dragging her away. When she wakes, she finds herself trapped in a dimly lit room beneath a boat, tied to a bed. On the adjacent bed lies Hayter, the same woman from earlier, also bound, very much alive. Panicked, Zephyr screams, but her voice is swallowed by the vast ocean. Hayter whispers that she's been there for a long time. She explains that their voices don't carry beyond these walls. No one can hear them. Terrified, Zephyr begins searching for anything that could unlock the cuffs, but finds nothing. Then her eyes fall on a name scratched into the wall, a girl's name. The realization hits her. Other girls had been here before, leaving their final mark before vanishing forever. Above deck, Tacker calmly fishes, humming to himself. As the story unfolds, Zephyr and Hayter's fate becomes intertwined with Tacker's disturbing obsession with sharks. Each moment grows darker, as Zephyr struggles to find a way to escape, while Moses begins to sense something is terribly wrong and starts searching for her on his own. And from here, the nightmare only deepens. Meanwhile, Zephyr, chained to the bed, tries to calm her racing thoughts. Hayter quietly tells her that another tourist once shared this same fate, but never made it out alive. The scratched names on the wall, faded and covered by paint, were proof of that. Each name represented someone who had once hoped to be found, but never was. Zephyr swallows hard, realizing that she's now part of a nightmare much larger than she imagined. Up on the deck, Tacker sits leisurely, throwing scraps into the ocean as sharks circle below. At one point, Zephyr whispers to Hayter, "Did anyone come looking for you?" Hayter replies bitterly, "I was with someone when I came aboard, but trust me, you don't want to know what became of him." That single comment is enough for Zephyr to realize that Hayter's companion, Greg, was murdered by Tucker and fed to the sharks. Then Hayter turns the question around. "What about you? Anyone who'd come searching if you went missing?" Zephyr forces a small, sad smile. "No, no one will miss me." But she was wrong. Unbeknownst to her, Moses is already suspicious. When he sees Zephyr's van being towed from the beach, a place she would never abandon, he senses something is terribly off. He rushes to the police station, explaining that Zephyr is missing. The officer, however, dismisses him. "She's a wanderer," the cop shrugs. "Probably just went off somewhere. Happens all the time." Unsatisfied, Moses takes matters into his own hands, determined to find her. Back on the boat, Zephyr spends the day struggling with her cuffs. As night falls, her eyes drift to Hayter's bikini, noticing a thin metal wire in the lining. Desperate, she tries pulling it free, hoping it might work as a lockpick. Just then, Tacker enters with bread and water. Both women are parched, their throats dry from the heat. Hayter gulps down the water quickly, while Zephyr tries to stay cautious. But Tacker notices Hayter acting strangely, clutching the blanket tightly. Suspicion grows in his eyes. Before he can pull the sheet away, Zephyr interrupts, snapping, "Give me the food." The distraction works. He hands it over and moments later leaves. Zephyr then resumes working on the cuffs. But suddenly, dizziness overtakes her. Tacker had drugged the water. Before she can free herself, she collapses. When she wakes again, she's tied to a chair on the deck. Hayter is strapped into a harness, dangling above the water. A camera sits on a tripod, recording everything. Tacker stands proudly before them, beginning one of his bizarre speeches. He declares that sharks are the world's most perfect predators, the true rulers of creation. "God isn't above," he says, eyes wild. "God is below, in the water. Where life began, where life will end." He takes a pair of scissors, snips some of Hayter's hair, and carefully tucks it away into his collection. Then, pouring blood into the sea, he summons the sharks. The waters churn as fins slice through the surface. Without hesitation, Tacker lowers Hayter into the bloody water. She thrashes helplessly, screaming, but the sharks attack, tearing her apart as the camera records every second. Zephyr watches, horrified, shaking violently. She scrawls her and Hayter's names onto the wall later. Beneath layers of other faded names she discovers hidden under paint. Each one belonged to a victim. Tacker wasn't just a madman. He was a serial killer. The tapes he kept, the locks of hair, all trophies of the countless tourist women he had sacrificed to the sea. The next morning, Zephyr sees Hayter's remains drifting in the water, a chilling sight. Meanwhile, Moses scours the beach, searching desperately. He finds Zephyr's surfboard abandoned, which deepens his fears. Her belongings are there, but she's missing. As night falls, Tacker brings food and water again. Zephyr, filled with rage, kicks the tray over and spits venom at him. "You're not powerful. You're just a pathetic bug." Tacker doesn't respond, only walks away silently. Spotting a bucket nearby, Zephyr rips off its handle, sharpening it into a makeshift weapon. Later, when Tacker approaches with a syringe, planning to sedate her again, she lunges and drives the weapon into him. He screams, stumbling back. Quickly, she snatches his belt, finds the key, and frees herself. But before she can escape fully, Tucker manages to jab the syringe into her leg. She staggers, weakening as the sedative spreads through her veins. Still, she fights to crawl upstairs, reaching the radio. She sends out a desperate call for help, but no one responds. Spotting a boat in the distance, she screams, waving her arms. But it's a party boat. Music drowns her cries. Just then, Tucker appears again, demanding she hand over the camera she grabbed. Instead, she hurls it into the ocean. Furious, Tucker drags her back below deck, locking her away once more. Since he has no camera now, he postpones her execution, deciding to buy a new one. He sails toward shore, leaving her trapped. Meanwhile, Moses grows more determined. He reviews parking lot CCTV footage and notices a truck slamming into Zephyr's van. The truck has the words "Tucker's Experience" painted across it. Alarm bells go off in his head. Investigating further, he finds Tucker's address and heads straight for the boat. Once aboard, he hears Zephyr's muffled screams from below. He rushes down, breaking in to find her. She looks at him with tears of relief. "Grab something upstairs so I can get free," she pleads. Moses races back up to call the police. But Tucker ambushes him, slamming into him and smashing his phone. The call had barely connected, but it was enough to alert the authorities. Tucker beats Moses brutally, but Moses fights back fiercely, nearly killing him. Suddenly Dave, loyal to Tucker, arrives and attacks Moses from behind. As chaos unfolds, Dave finally realizes the truth about Tucker. But before he can react, Tucker kills him in cold blood. Knowing the shore is no longer safe, Tucker sails to a deserted island, dragging both Moses and Zephyr along. On the island, he straps Moses to a bed beside Zephyr. Later, he hauls them both onto the deck, ready to record his greatest show. He chops Dave's body into pieces and tosses them into the sea, luring the sharks. Then, with his camera rolling, he pushes Moses into the water. But Moses stays perfectly still, just as Zephyr had warned him. The sharks circle but don't attack. Frustrated, Tucker yanks him back onto the deck, stomps him brutally, and throws him back in again. This time, Moses is nearly unconscious. Above, a helicopter appears in the sky, searching for Zephyr. But the waves drag Moses under, barely keeping him alive. Zephyr, desperate, tries again to break free. Realizing there's no other way, she forces her thumb out of place to slip from the cuff. When it still won't work, she bites down hard, severing her own thumb to finally escape. Bloodied but free, she prepares to fight. Tucker storms in with a syringe, but Zephyr tricks him, shoving him into a room and locking the door. She runs to the boat system, trying to start it, but Tucker finds another route and cuts the power. With no other option, she fights him head-on. The battle is fierce. Spotting an island with a wedding reception, Zephyr dives into the water, despite the sharks circling. She barely makes it before Tucker recaptures her, dragging her back. This time, he decides she's the true threat. He straps Moses to the chair and suspends Zephyr in the harness. As the camera rolls, a massive great white shark appears. Unlike the others, it dominates the waters. Tucker freezes. It's the same shark from his childhood, the one that scarred him. To him, it's a god. He lowers Zephyr toward the water, obsessed. But fate twists. Tucker drops his harpoon, which slides to Zephyr. She seizes it, cuts herself free, and drops into the water, face to face with the great white. But instead of attacking, the shark swims past her calmly, as though recognizing her will to survive. Empowered, Zephyr climbs back onto the boat. She and Tucker clash in a brutal final showdown. Just as Tucker overpowers her, Moses, barely alive, strikes him with an iron rod from behind. The blow sends Tucker tumbling into the sea. Blood gushes from his wounds, attracting the sharks. Screaming, Tucker thrashes, but the creatures he worshipped turn on him, ripping him apart in a frenzy. His death becomes the very spectacle he once filmed, but now no one is left to watch. Zephyr fires a flare gun, sending a blazing signal into the night sky. Soon, a police boat arrives, guided by the unfinished call Moses had made. They rescue both survivors. Moses, gravely injured, clings to life. Zephyr holds him close, refusing to let go. As they sail away, she glances back at the island where her nightmare ended. Moses weakly takes her hand and whispers, "I told you we met for a reason." Zephyr gives him a faint smile. That smile carries exhaustion, pain, and grief, but above all, the spirit of survival. Together, hand in hand, they leave the dark sea behind, sailing toward the horizon. The story ends here.